Actually, this week, I'd have to say, has been one of the most interesting weeks of my career, and it's even continued to sort of intrigue me sitting next to John over here listening to something he started around about the year that I was born and has patiently seen through to this evening. It's quite an inspirational story when you think of the patience, the dedication, and I think the energy that must go into sustaining an idea for such a long time. So I'm not a winner tonight, but a very impressive conversation I've had with you and your daughter, who's probably similar to me, didn't listen to Dad too much, didn't inherit too many of the genes, but incredibly interested and proud of what our parents have done. So really a great story. I guess my interesting week sort of started with a gentleman by the name of Edward Joseph Snowden, whose probably story and actions are quite familiar to you now as a whistleblower, and that's not really the story. I think what Edward did was validate some market research that a little company we started 2 years ago had done, which looked at some of the struggles that our communities would face as a country, as companies, and even as citizens as we dealt with the change in the landscape that we now live in, and dealing with the challenges of security and privacy and a digital footprint that we no longer control. And I think what's really, it's sort of for us as a little New Zealand company that has got quite strong ambitions that have, I guess, been quantified today. It's just a validation of the time and effort that we spent in researching and understanding what might happen, and also the encouragement we had from mentors, people in New Zealand that were prepared to take the time to spend with us to listen to our ideas, to nurture them and to encourage us to keep going. All validated by a guy we didn't know who decided that it was time to sort of speak up about some things that were happening in the world. The second thing that happened was sort of validated, or that continued in my interesting week, was when you have an idea, and it wasn't my idea, it was a group of people who are far more intelligent and been patient and better educated than certainly I ever was, about a piece of technology, and we really nurtured over the course of 2 years. And finally, you've got a public market in a country we live in who puts a dollar value to that. And I think that's a really interesting experience, and I particularly respect the people in this room who maybe not initially driven by the dollar, the money, the value of what they're doing, but ultimately that's an important thing for you, I think, and for the country, because at the end of the day, that continued investment, that commercial value of what you do allows you to continue doing the great work that you do, and also investing in the country for people like me, our family and our kids that are clearly very important to the future of New Zealand. So the third part, I guess, has really been this evening, and I thought what I would do is just share my experience over the last 12 or 18 months. For those of you not familiar with what we do, and I'm not trying to sell you shares or anything like that, we're a software company at Wynyard Group. We specialise in some software that helps protect companies and countries from threat, crime and corruption, which is pretty brave and ambitious and ballsy sort of statement to make when you're from two rocks on the other side of the world as to where most of the challenges and real problems are. But we set about a couple of years ago trying to solve 4 or 5 problems that we saw that some of the customers that we already had and the customers we really wanted had. The growth in transnational crime, which probably doesn't concern you every day, but in other parts of the world it's something that keeps people awake at night. The companies we're dealing with that are dealing with masses of data, structured and unstructured data, and what are the really important things in that data that can help them create safe environments for their country and for the people that live in those countries. And then this balance around the ethics and the privacy concerns that we all have, making sure we maintain our identity in a world that's dramatically changed, where you're sharing your information, whether you like it or not, with the rest of the world's population. And at the core of it in our organisation is this fear, and this fear that every day we could become irrelevant as a company in a market and a dynamic that's moving so quickly. And it's that kind of fear within our organisation that's very positive. It drives change. And if you don't like change, then I can guarantee you, having been there, that you're going to like irrelevance a hell of a lot less. And so I guess one of the challenges that we have in this little company that we're trying to grow is making sure that our business is relevant, that our value proposition is compelling to the customers we're trying to sell to, and the products are required. And underpinning that is this balance that we've struck between relentless sales and marketing, and relevant and really highly productive investment in research. And that is a very difficult challenge, is to find how much money, how much time do you put into the product, the idea, before you try and commercialise it and take it to market. And I guess really to ensure that we had this razor focus on doing the right things and focusing on the things that were going to be commercially relevant, we sort of designed this rule book. And if I was to be honest, it was designed on a train somewhere between King's Cross and Leeds after about 3 or 4 bottles of wine, but it sort of made sense at the end of the trip. And what we really did as a company was look for opportunities where there were more than 2 megatrends that were clashing or crossing over. So rather than following the crowd and trying to disrupt an existing trend, we looked for opportunities between those trends that we could be disruptive and change things, that we could think of different ways to do things. We sort of bravely and perhaps stupidly decided we'd only try and enter into markets that were worth more than $1 billion. Why? Because they were big and they wouldn't be a constraint to growth. The challenge with that is you've got no excuses for not growing in that market. If there's more money, more opportunities, then it's really interesting discussions that you have with your board when you present. It's a really big market and you should invest in it, and you don't hit your numbers in the first month. It's a sort of an interesting discussion. And then sort of thirdly, we focused on building platforms rather than products. And if you go to sort of an MBA course or a lecture or a conference, you hear this all the time, and it didn't really resonate with me until literally a couple of years ago, when you could see the benefit of us being able to bring collaboration, the resources of multiple previously unrelated but really important entities together, which we now call partners, which participate in the platform that we've commercialised. And it just gives you scale, it gives you friends in places that you need to be, and it gives you the ability to reinvent yourself and share ideas. So platforms, I think, are really important. And then finally, and I think this is something that'll probably some people will roll their eyes in this room because we're in somewhat of a different industry than possibly many of you are, but the one rule that we have around innovation, investment in research and development in our company is that unless you can go from a concept or an idea or the research to market with a minimum viable product and make money within 12 months, we won't do it. And that drives a level of thinking around where you spend your time, and it drives a responsibility, I think, within the company to make sure that we can make money at the end of it. I know that's not what drives everybody, but at the end of the day, in the software game, in a global industry, that's ultimately what you're measured by. So sort of accidentally along the way, we became a little bit of a poster child for commercialisation of government-generated IP, and it started in actually in a cafe, Mojo Cafe in Molesworth Street in Wellington, where a conversation between myself, who didn't really understand what was going on, a very smart person who works for us, and a digital forensics analyst at New Zealand Police, decided that if we got together, took a little bit of IP, smart IP that the New Zealand government through police had invented, a bit of software that we had, and pulled it together, that we could come up with a really smart way of doing digital forensics. And Minister Joyce isn't here tonight because he's actually visiting, I think, tomorrow, one of our secure facilities in the UK to see that bit of technology, which really had its embryonic stages over a cup of coffee in Wellington between a government agency and a small software company operating one of the biggest and most complex crime and corruption inquiries in the world at the moment. So these are all kind of good news stories, certainly for us. And I think what they show is that actually if the right people come together at the right time and there's the right problem, that Kiwis can solve these problems. But really, despite being a kind of a small village, as I sort of think of us as, then we still have these challenges of companies like us and businesses like us, and there are many of them, and this discussion is had at the board of Callaghan almost every meeting, is how do we assemble virtual teams across multiple institutions, because we are small and we are fragmented, to try and solve bigger problems. And so I think with a great deal of respect for what KiwiNet is trying to do and actually doing, I think, and what tonight shows you're actually doing, is bringing people together with an objective, letting people in businesses like myself know who you are, what you can do, how you can help, and having a point of contact where we can go to try and solve these problems. If I could just sort of close with a couple of comments or observations. Firstly, I think you've done a fantastic job at KiwiNet of lifting the bar in terms of collaboration, so keep going. I think we're just starting in this country to understand how important that is and how much value it's starting to create. But the people that have been critics in the past are now starting to be fans, and it's important that we keep communicating what you're trying to do and how you're trying to do it and the importance of it. Secondly, I think the cycles for ideation, for innovation, for commercialisation are just contracting and shrinking dramatically in many of the sciences and areas we're in. And one of the opportunities I see is, a small group of people on two rocks at the other side of the world that are not prepared to sort of take no for an answer, is we can be faster, we can be smarter, and we can work much closer together to benefit from this tightening of the innovation cycle. And I guess finally, probably a personal thanks. I have three small children at home in bed who are just fascinated by science and technology. They're also fascinated by Angry Birds, so I get too excited about that. But cool stuff, and I think it's the sorts of things that you as an organisation and the more patient amongst us who invest their lifetime's work in brilliance. It's those sorts of things that are going to make a difference for my children and for your children in this country. So thank you. Fantastic to see you all here. Congratulations to all the finalists, and I hope you have a wonderful day today and tomorrow. Thank you.